Welcome into a Tuesday, February 17th edition of Daily Faceoff Live. Yaremchuk, Carter Hutton with you, breaking down the qualifying round at the Milan Games and more. Hut, how you doing?
I'm doing well, buddy. There's a lot going on this morning. You know what I mean? Normally I have a little bit of time to just kind of like have a cup of coffee, get my day going, but we're right in it today. There's so much going on. This is exciting. And even for you, 2 hours earlier than me. So I can't imagine what you're going through.
Yeah, lots going on. A couple of games already done out at the Milano Cortina Games. One more underway, one more still coming. And that, of course, is the Sweden and Latvia game, Huts. We'll talk about that with Uffe Bodin from Hockey Sverige in a little bit, our friend from out in Sweden. But let's kick things off by talking about the games we saw today. And Huts, I want to start with the first game, Team Germany. Leon Draisaitl, a big 3-point performance as the Germans take down France by a score of 5-1. They will now move on and play Slovakia. And it's pretty wild to think, Huts, one of Slovakia or Germany are going to find a way to the semifinals of this tournament. And I'll be honest, I think Germany's got a pretty decent shot here based on how they look today.
Yeah, chipping a chair here, right? With their firepower, with Draisaitl, with Stützle, with Scheid, and their goaltending, right? Phil Grubauer's been good. So I do think this is going to be a challenge for both teams, right? Because now you're in a different momentum, right? I think early in the tournament, right, there's a lot less pressure, right? You're just kind of playing through games and you're just no expectations are there. But now you're in a big game against Germany, Slovakia, where both these teams aren't used to being in this situation. It should be a big draw. And I think for Slovakia, they have that younger talent. Obviously, we touched on Slavkovsky yesterday, how good he's been. Now can Draisaitl's leadership come into play in a big game? And, this would be pretty awesome if we see USA get kicked out and Germany get in. I think Draisaitl might get a laugh at the Chuck brothers.
Yeah, that would be, again, something. So I think of the bracket here, if Pat wants to flash it up as we take a look at the way things are going. Switzerland, they moved on with a 3-0 win over Italy. So they're going to take on Finland. That game, again, should be close, probably relatively low scoring. It's hard to imagine the Finns not winning that one. I do think, again, that Germany-Slovakia matchup is going to be amazing. And then the key thing to remember here is that they don't reseed coming out of this round, but they do reseed coming out of the next round. So Canada will play, again, one of Czechia or Denmark. And then if Canada moves on, they get the lowest remaining seed, which, again, if Finland ends up being the lowest remaining seed, that's a possibility if Slovakia and USA both advance. But there also is just that Swedish curveball that exists in this tournament now, where if Sweden finds a way to beat USA, not only would they eliminate the Americans, they would then have to play the Canadians in a potential semifinal matchup. So there's still a lot that could change here, but that path to a potential Canada-Germany semifinal is still alive. It would take, again, a Germany upset and USA beating Sweden or likely beating Sweden in the next round, but still plenty up for grabs here. No matter which way you cut it, Huts, we're going to get some really interesting semifinal matchups, never mind the ones we have in the quarters.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of good matchups. And I got the game on live right here. The Danes, it's 3-2 for the Czech Republic. The Danes just had a breakaway and a big save by Lukas Dostal. So even this game there's a lot of excitement, right? You're talking about elimination games where anything can happen. But as for Team Sweden, we're going to get to that with Bodin. They've kind of made their bed now, right? And this is why it goes to tell you that the round robin part can be so important. You have to you have to score goals. You have to do something that's going to put you in a good situation because you might pay for it later on. And I think for the Swedes, we're going to see Markstrom today, and he's going to have to be the guy to push. But this is exciting, right? You are in, and I think this is something you talked about a lot before these games started, right, Ty? You said there's going to be some upsets. You're going to get in a situation where we're going to see some teams that necessarily weren't there predicted because of the talent, because of what's going on. So this is exciting, I think, in general, just for hockey, right? To get these other teams, these other countries. And we've seen that at the games here. Every time that there's an odd team in it, the crowd seems to be absolutely rocking.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that goaltending decision that Team Sweden has a little bit later on when Uffe joins the show. But let's talk about some potential lineup decisions for Canada and USA ahead of their quarterfinal games tomorrow. Again, Huts, tomorrow, you and I aren't going to have a show because it'll be right during that Canada and whoever, likely Denmark. They're up 3-1, likely Czechia, they're up 3-1 on Denmark right now. But no Nathan MacKinnon on the ice for Team Canada. They're calling it a maintenance day for both MacKinnon and Sam Bennett, but Brad Marchand is expected to return to the lineup. And I guess the one big story is Josh Morrissey. John Cooper saying he looked good in practice. He's not sure on his status. If Josh Morrissey is available, are you taking out Travis Sanheim or potentially even Drew Doughty to put Morrissey back in this tournament, or do you keep with the same blue line that Canada had for their last 2 games.
Yeah, I think you do. I think he is that valuable piece that he has to come in. And the fact that you're able to dress 7 defensemen, I think, is that X factor, where if it was to go into a situation like an NHL game where you can only dress 6 and then all of a sudden he starts playing a little bit and he can't perform, then it's a little more worrisome. With that extra defenseman, I think he is a guy that you plug in because he could be a big difference maker. And he was so good in the Four Nations Cup. Not that they didn't win the Four Nations Cup, but leading up to that final where he wasn't available, he was kind of a rock on the back end. So I think he works himself into the lineup. And as for Brad Marchand, I'm not sure where it goes. If it's Seth Jarvis that's out and Marchand is in, I believe that's what the case will be. Just for Brad Marchand, this is a big game guy, right? This is a guy that can play any role. He's going to get minimal minutes. And the nice part of this, in my personal opinion, when we look at Canada, is how many minutes has McDavid played in a game? Like, not a lot, right? They really haven't had to press on the gas. Now, I think Petey made a really good topic about this is I think now you're going to start seeing the big guns get way more minutes. I think minutes start to creep up and creep. Thanks, Patty, for pulling up the minutes here. We've seen McDavid at 16, 17 minutes in the, total. Like, that's not a lot. Like, he can really press that a bit more. And then I think you have that value of going, McKinnon, McDavid, and then whoever, and back to it. And then if you need to go nuclear, you bring the big dogs together because Celebrini has done such a good job with McDavid and McKinnon. So I think at no hold bar now, right? You're going to see the big dogs play a lot of minutes with only potentially 3 games left.
One note out of Team USA as they skated today. Again, they await the winner of Sweden-Latvia in a quarterfinal tomorrow. They are not going to be playing Kyle Connor. He was skating as the 14th forward for Team USA. I mean, this was a story going back to last year's Four Nations final when, again, Kyle Connor didn't play. Matt Tkachuk did play and only played a handful of minutes. But he seems to have fallen out of favor a little bit with this coaching staff. And again, I understand you want guys in different roles and things of that nature. But when you get to the medal round, when, again, one goal, one shot can grossly change an outcome of a hockey game, I'm stunned that they don't want to play Kyle Connor. I mean, the minutes are like, there's clearly something here that this coaching staff is not seeing in Kyle Connor.
Yeah, it's very interesting for a guy that is so dominant in the NHL and such a good playmaker and he's a game breaker, right? That's what you talk about when you look at this team. And I think he can be valuable in any single role with his skating. So it is weird, as I look back on the Four Nations final, right? And again, you're trying to break down because these teams won't meet each other unless it is in the final. Like, Kyle Connor could be that difference maker in a game-changing moment, right? And I think that's your point where you look at the addition of Tage Thompson in this lineup, game changer, right? These are guys that can make big plays in big moments. And Clayton Keller subbed in there as well. So I do just wonder what it is. And is there something on the defensive side of the puck that he is lacking where they think that it could be a flight risk of, him being on the ice and giving up more than you're going to get. So it is surprising. And if we look back on this, and they don't get to the promised land, are they going to regret Kyle Connor not playing? Jason Robertson, Cole Caulfield, these guys that can find the back of the net and are big question marks that they were left off Team USA.
Yeah, again, if it comes down to another low-scoring final game or however the final plays out or however Team USA potentially get eliminated before that, like, again, I'm not calling them a lock to beat this Swedish team, Hutton. I do think that there is something to the fact that the USA has not been pushed yet in this tournament. They breezed past Germany. I guess Denmark played them close for a little bit, but the shots were 100-0 or whatever. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Denmark was really, scaring the USA at any point in that hockey game. Like, they breezed through the group stage. And you look at a Swedish team now who today is playing for their lives, but has had a tough game against Finland, had a tough game against Slovakia. Like, I don't know, man. This Sweden team's a little bit more battle-tested. I think the first period tomorrow is going to tell us a lot, because if Sweden can come out and play like a team who's been, playing desperation hockey now for a couple of games here and a couple of days at these games, there's a chance they just punch USA in the mouth early.
I do. I think it's going to be starting on time. And I think for Team Sweden, that's going to be a factor because they've been playing a little bit clenched already. They've had their backs against the wall. And this is where the argument of finishing a little bit higher, not that I love the way the Canadian schedule was, how it was kind of like descending in the sense of like Czechs, Switzerland, and then France. But now you got to rev it back up again. And I don't think this first quarter final matchup will be as overwhelming as it could be for the Team United States. And Doug Armstrong's jumping on the panel right now, so it'll be fun to listen to what he has to say after the fact, because these are big moments. But when I look at McDavid, McKinnon, and Crosby, and how absolutely dialed in they are, I don't think any of these guys in this room as professionals will be able to have a setback, and I think they're going to start on time. So I think Team Canada definitely holds the course of knowing that they can now start to ascend and peak their game at the right time.
We're going to get to our guest and keep talking Winter Games here in a couple of minutes, but actually one NHL story that developed over the last 24 hours. There's actually been a few, to be fair. Jeff Skinner put on waivers for the purpose of terminating his contract with San Jose Sharks. So the expectation is today at noon, Jeff Skinner will become a free agent, but Brandon Bussi's got a new contract extension with the Carolina Hurricanes. So it's a 3-year deal at a $1.9 million AAV. Considering the year he's having, I'm honestly kind of surprised that the AAV came in as low as it did. I'm honestly kind of surprised Bussi agreed to sign this when he did. If you would have let this play out, maybe he had some playoff success with the Hurricanes, like there's a chance he maybe could have cashed in a little bit more. But Bussi and the Canes agree, I guess, stability for a guy like Bussi, who was just a journeyman before this season and really hadn't established himself in the NHL yet. For him to get basically $6 million guaranteed is quite an accomplishment. But what did you make of the Bussi deal with the Canes?
Yeah, I think as a guy that's 27 years old, and he's never had security. That's probably the main goal here. He's getting term, he's getting money spread out. And I think maybe they offered him a 1 or 2 year deal at a higher number and he holds out. Now, barring injury, barring whatever, you take the risk out of it, right? You're taking that deal right now. You don't know how the second half is going to go. But also, that being said, to play devil's advocate is you kind of have it. You got everything going on right now, right? You're 23, 3-1. You're 27 years old. There's still a lot of good runway left, a lot of good legs. The goalie market is weak. And you look at the fact that like Scott Wedgwood just took a team-friendly deal as well. So there's another guy that's scratched off that list. Brandon Bussi, you kind of have the world by the cojones here. Like you can go out and you can make a ton of money going to free agency. And this was something that I dealt with. I took a stray yesterday saying that this was a comparable to me, but I was 32 years old. And I had played 5 years in the league, and then I went to Buffalo and got my payday. You know, I get your understanding. You're a little bit protected when you look at Brandon Bussi and you look at him being in a Carolina system. But that being said, if these 3 years don't go well, that money's off the table. Because I think he could easily got 3 years for $12 million, not 6, if he goes to free agency.
Well, yeah, and for the people who are saying, no one would give him that kind of money coming off one season, like there are Andrew Hammond, Scott Darling, like there's a long list of examples. Like teams will do anything to get a guy that they think can be a number one. And if Bussi would have entered a pretty weak free agent class, I think he could have cashed in. And I did not like that Puck Empire was throwing shots at Carter Hutton. I'm ready to go. I was full Tom Wilson for you, Hutz. I was ready on the internet to fight anyone who had words for you.
I love it though. Makes me feel alive though. And again, I get it. I don't think it was a shot at me. More the fact of like saying that I risked it and I took more money and went to a weaker team in that sense. But I think the comparables aren't the same because I was 32 and I had over 100 games played in the league. Bussi has 27 games in the league. That's it. So I get he needs the security. So it's a different factor.
Back to the Winter Games out in Milano Cortina and welcome in Uffe Bodin from Hockey Sverige. Uffe, appreciate you jumping on and giving us some time. How have you been enjoying the Olympics so far?
Well, it's been really nice watching a lot of good hockey, but from a Swedish perspective, we have a few issues, I would say.
Well, yeah, the preliminary round obviously didn't go according to plan for Sweden. They now go into the medal round as the 7 seed. That presents a whole bunch of issues. Let's start by looking back at the way they opened up this tournament. What of all the issues that there were, whether it's goaltending, I know coaching's been a big conversation. What's sort of at the top of your list for what's been most disappointing for Team Sweden through the first 3 games?
Oh, yeah, it's been like a new storyline every game, basically. But we can start with the goaltending, of course. I came into the tournament set on Philip Gustafsson being the number one, and that felt like a secure choice from the Swedish staff. But unfortunately, he hasn't delivered. I think he had 2 pretty subpar games against Italy and Finland. And now they turned to Jacob Markstrom in the 3rd game against Slovakia. And that was also kind of a up and down game. I mean, everyone who's seen him in New Jersey this season knows that he can make these unbelievable saves, but he can also, let a few squeak through. And that's basically what we saw in that game. And obviously, it's hard to swallow the pill when Lucas Raymond takes that selfish penalty, with 2.5 minutes left, and put his own team in a hole. And they scored that last power play goal, which makes all the difference in the world, basically. So yeah, it was kind of I don't know if I ever experienced like a Swedish victory where somebody had been so negative, but obviously it was a loss. It wasn't a victory.
Now their path gets a lot tougher, right? And that's one thing with this
Yeah,
preliminary round. Like, now they're going to have to win their way through. And like the way this team was managed, I think has been a big conversation, right? Having Philip
for
Forsberg
sure.
as that extra forward and how they've dispersed that. What do you feel we see today when we look at this team? And like, do you think it's more no holds bar now? Whoever's going is going to get those minutes?
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at last game against Slovakia, it felt like it was a blender of lines. Like no line was kept intact for some of the game. Like it was basically a new line every other shift. So I don't really know what to expect from tonight's game, to be honest, guys, because I don't think they found the right chemistry on the team yet. And first it was Forsberg. He played like 1 minute the first game, 7 minutes the second game before they finally realized, okay, we have problems scoring goals. We better, take our best goal scorer and actually give him a shot. And now it's Jesper Bratt who's in the doghouse, who I don't think he played 1 second against Slovakia. So it's like he's been the coach, Sam Lam. He's been very, consistent that he wants like a pretty, I don't, maybe I wouldn't call it physical, but he wants that checking fourth line, and then he has 9 spots for 10 or 11 guys, depending on how you want to view it. And that's sort of the problem right now, that someone is going to be on the outside, and for some reason it's not Pontus Holmberg. For some reason right now it's Jesper Bratt, I guess, because he had a pretty bad game against Finland, and now he's paying the price for that. But the Forsberg situation is pretty interesting. I mean, he came into the tournament with a hot hand. He's played great for Nashville leading up to the tournament, but what you need to keep in mind is he had a subpar performance at the Four Nations, and then when he came home for the Worlds in Stockholm last spring, he didn't have much luck. He didn't have much impact, and for some reason I believe that might be like something that the coaching staff has kept in their brain. So I guess that could be a reason why they decided that he was not going to play in the beginning of a tournament.
Yeah, which is understandable, right? I feel like, again, like when we look at Canada, we look at some of these other teams, it's how they performed at the Four Nations or World Championship. There is that recency bias. And now for Jacob Markstrom getting the net, do you believe this is the right experienced guy for this job to be put in this situation? Do you think they're trying to protect him? Because I know Gustafsson has been really good this year, but his first period's been horrible in this tournament, right? He had 2-on-4 in the first game and 2-on-6 in the second game, which is kind of devastating to a lineup. And do you think that's been a factor for this team?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was his job to lose, and he lost it basically. So I think, me and my colleague Mons, we have our own show that we run during the Olympics, and we said when we recorded ahead of this game, like it actually would have been nicer or more, I think, more exciting actually to put in Jesper Wallstedt, because I don't think Jacob Markstrom did a lot to help his own stock in the last game. But I mean, it's probably not. And you notice, Carter, since you have a lot of experience. If you change goalies like 3 times, I don't think that would be good for the team morale. So I understand they go with Markstrom. He's, as you mentioned, like the experienced guy. He's been around a long time. He's very likable, a leader in his own way. So I'm not surprised, but I wonder when we look back at this, you can't help but think that maybe Jesper Wallstedt would have been the guy to go with, actually.
Who is another guy who's had a great season with the Minnesota
Yeah.
Wild. Let's look ahead now, and not that you want to look past Latvia or anything like that, but let's live in a world where they move on to Team USA. How can Sweden win that matchup? We know there's things that USA does well. That blue line moves the puck. They have a very physical forward group. But what can Sweden do to put some advantages in that matchup from their own side?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for one part, I think everyone needs to, especially the top players, they need to really be on top of the game. I mean, really almost, perform better than they ever have before, because that US team is pretty scary, to be honest. They've had some lapses in this tournament, so I don't think they're unbeatable. If you compare it to Canada, I'm actually glad it's not Canada we're facing off, but I think against Denmark, the first period, it was not very pretty. I think defensively, despite the blue line is excellent, but I think defensively they're actually something you can take advantage of. But in all honesty, I don't like Sweden's odds against the US. It's gonna be a really tough out if they get there. After the experience against Belarus in 2002 in Salt Lake City, I don't think I can really, having experienced something like that in my lifetime, I can't really take for granted that they actually beat Latvia.
So at this point, the way they've gone, do you value, we were talking about this time earlier, how Sweden's had a little bit of some rough patch here. Do you think that's going to help them moving into this round, or is it a little bit too late? And at this point, as a Swedish fan, where do you value, what will Sweden have to do to walk away from this Olympics being like, hey, this was a success, or is it too late now?
I think reaching the semifinals, at least for me, ahead of the tournament, when you saw what group they played and the road ahead, I sort of ranked them third behind the Canada and the US. But obviously they made it a lot more difficult right now. I think the hope right now is that they actually showed some really good signs in the third period against Slovakia. They played really well up until that penalty that Raymond took. And I think if they can build on that, I think they actually have a chance of at least doing something positive. But at this point, it doesn't look very promising. I have to be honest and say that.
There seems to be a lot of outside criticism of Sam Hallam, and I know you mentioned him earlier. Is it fair, I guess, is just an easy way for me to ask that. Like, there's a lot of people who, again, don't get to experience Sam Hallam because he's not in the NHL, but a lot of, North American critics are sitting here, pointing fingers at the OEL thing and the goaltending and Philip Forsberg and all of that. Do you view that criticism of Hallam as fair?
I mean, yes and no, because he's getting a lot of heat over here at home as well. He, just for context, he came into this role, he took over from Johan Garpenlov in 2022, and Sam Hallam has been extremely successful on the domestic level. He led Växjö Lakers to 3 championship titles, and he was seen as, maybe the best Swedish coach we had. So I think everyone in Sweden had really high expectations when he took over from Johan Garpenlov to lead the Swedish team. However, what he has to show for it, for Nations last year, it wasn't a success. I mean, they played well in some games, but not enough to really convince people that they were onto something. But I think, there's a lot of criticism, especially now the past 2 Worlds. They managed to capture bronze, but they were completely outplayed by a young American team in the semifinals in the tournament at home in Stockholm. And he had a big spat after the game in a TV studio interview with one of the experts, which didn't really look good on him. So I think there's been a lot of criticism against him, and it has not, what's been going on in these Olympics, it hasn't really helped his case. But this is also his last season. He will move to Switzerland next year and coach a team there. So I think this spring and this tournament and the Worlds it will give you an indication of how well he did his job. And right now, I don't think he's, it's not looking positive for him.
Uffe, appreciate you popping on. Thanks so much for giving us some time today.
Anytime, guys. Thank you very much.
All right, Huts, we got a daily Faceoff Ask DFO question for you right now. It feels like Connor McDavid is the overwhelming favorite to win tournament MVP. He is the top of the odds board, and we'll talk about some other odds here in just a second. But give me a player who's on your MVP watch list at Milan Games here. Someone who you think over the course of the medal round can maybe sneak their way into that conversation. Because, and I'll add this, remember back in 2022, Juraj Slafkovsky won the tournament MVP, even though Slovakia won bronze. So it doesn't necessarily always come from a team that wins the gold medal.
Yeah, I think if I'm thinking of a team that can win it and there might be this X factor, it's going to be Connor Hellebuyck. I think Connor Hellebuyck could be his coming out party, right? As we talk about a USA team who's going to have some tough matchups, right? When we're looking at potentially Sweden in the quarterfinal, and then from there, who they face moving forward, I think he could be that X factor. If he has 3 big games and he doesn't really give up much and he's rock solid, I think he could come flying in. Because points-wise, I just really think it's going to be hard for anyone to really get into that class where Connor McDavid's at right now.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, which ties into our daily bets for Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Macklin Celebrini is obviously predictably the odds-on favorite to lead Canada in goals in this tournament at -154. But let me throw this your way, Huts. How do you feel about maybe taking a shot on one of Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon? Connor McDavid is only 2 goals back of Macklin Celebrini. He's plus 320 to lead Canada in goal scoring. Again, Celebrini has been a remarkable story. He has the only 2-goal performance of this tournament for Canada, but I think there's a world where Connor McDavid, as the games get a little bit bigger and there's more juice behind him, I think we might see him flip into more of a shoot first mentality. I could see Connor McDavid popping off and scoring 3-4 goals in this medal round.
Oh, yeah, I think that's something that could happen so easily the way he's been playing it at his pace. And I think it's just, too, there's also that element of like comfort now, like finding a little bit of better rhythm with Celebrini, with Wilson. And then if they go to the power play, like he is a guy that can shoot. And I think there were some stats from Four Nations about how he didn't shoot the puck as much as he should have. And you know it better than anybody watching him in Edmonton. When he starts to fire the puck, the results are there. And he seems like a man possessed. So I don't think that's a long shot at all. I definitely think he could have a game where he gets to a hat trick, 3 or 4 goals, especially if he gets an easier matchup in the first round here.
All right, some updates now quickly before we wrap up the show. Czechia with a 3-2 lead on Denmark. Denmark got one back right at the end of the second period. Third period underway right now. Latvia, Sweden coming up in just over 2 hours, I should say. And that will wrap up the qualifying round tomorrow, 6 a.m. Eastern. Germany, Slovakia, that is where we kick off the day. 10:30 a.m. Eastern, Canada versus either Czechia or Denmark. And a reminder, Jeff Merrick and I will be live immediately following the game with a special edition of The Sheet. Switzerland, Finland is at noon Eastern, and USA against either Sweden or Latvia is the late game at 3 o'clock Eastern. So that's the run of your schedule tomorrow. Early lines, they actually have Germany as slight favorites over Slovakia tomorrow, and Finland sitting at -205 against Switzerland. Sweden's 2.5 goal favorites over Latvia today. So there's sort of your update on everything that's coming in the next 24 hours, both in terms of our coverage here at Daily Faceoff. John Lazarus will be live tomorrow after the USA game with full post-game coverage of their matchup against, again, either Sweden or Latvia. I keep saying either Sweden or Latvia. But Laz will be live tomorrow with Canada coverage. Merrick and I got it covered on the Canada side of things. Let's wrap up with a little bit of garbage time. And garbage time today is brought to you by our friends at Hyundai Canada. Huts, we got a massive dump of snow today. Like, we're talking north of 15 centimeters of snow. I still had to trudge into the office, flip the Palisade into snow mode. Boom, I'm gone. That thing handles the road like nothing. Shout out to our friends at Hyundai. I'm planning, I mean, listen, it's February, it's snowy and all that. I'm starting to plan my summer golf road trip. The thought, that's what's getting me through these snowy days, is like going on a nice road trip this summer, playing a ton of golf. Like, that's my happy place right now.
Yeah, you got it. We've had actually a run of good weather here the last week or so, and I think we're getting hit with a snowstorm too. So I always joke that like February, we started to get this nice spring weather. It's a bit of a tease. So I won't commit to it yet. I'm not getting the golf clubs out, but it'll come soon enough. And I look forward to these next few days, buddy. We have a lot of fun going on, a lot of hockey. This is great to break it down.
Garbage time. Wanted to give some love to a group out in Edmonton, the world's longest hockey game. For the 11th time, Huts, these guys have set the world record for the world's longest outdoor hockey game. Over the course of those years, they've raised over $8 million, the Alberta Cancer Foundation. And this year, to set the record, they had to be playing hockey for 261 consecutive hours, no matter the weather, no matter the time of day. There were 5 skaters, 2 goalies, and 4 officials, I believe, on the ice. Everything is done up to rule. Guinness is watching the whole time, and these guys did it 261 hours on the ice. This year, they raised just over $1 million for the Alberta Cancer Foundation. I know some guys who've played in this, and Brent Sake out at Sakers Acres, he is just an absolute legend in the Edmonton community, and he is the number one reason why this event can happen. But what these guys who are just like average, everyday working people in Edmonton and Alberta, I know some people travel in, Huts, what they put their bodies through to play hockey for, and they do shifts, right? So like you'll play for a bit, then you'll sit for a few hours. And you have some time to rest and recover, but what they put their body through to play hockey for more than 10 consecutive days is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, that's wild. That's quite the event. I think it took me 10 years in the NHL to play about that long. So it's unbelievable they do it. It's a great event. It's great that they raise a bunch of money. So this is unbelievable. And maybe something we can be a part of one day. That'd be cool to join in. I don't know if I could do 10 days straight, though. Maybe I could just be a backup, maybe help out once in a while. Bring the boys water.
Sit on the bench for 10 straight days? That's what you want to do?
That's kind of what I did most of my days, buddy?
All right, that is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Everybody in the YouTube, great stuff. No Daily Faceoff live tomorrow. Myself, Jeff Merrick, live following Canada's game against either Czechia or Denmark, and then back to regularly scheduled program on Thursday. But thank you to everybody in the YouTube. Thank you to Uffe Bodin for dropping by, and we'll see you all back here on Wednesday. Thank you. Thursday.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.